small gap down in the SPYs this morning. Friday, I think, did turn out to be, I think what I said Friday in the morning meeting was could be the quietest non-farm payroll day ever, and I think that kind of bore out. We basically didn't move all day. We're in a 50-cent range. Just we've lost a little bit of momentum. Markets, still at a 2019 high. We zoom out on the daily. It seems like maybe we're starting to enter a little phase like this a few weeks after the December lows, where we kind of just grinded and then got really tight ranges for about 3 weeks before we started to move sideways around 280 and then had the pullback. So perhaps we're just setting up for another sideways move before the next decent pullback. I think, if we do actually take out Friday's high, 290, 291, I think is what people will be thinking about. And then that could set us up for a consolidation, another pullback. This was a good pullback that we had at the beginning of March. It was a little bit bigger than I expected, but it was about $8. The next one was only about $5. $6 is more kind of the standard SPY pullback when the market's trending higher, unless things change. So if we zoom in, 288 by 286 was the range we were looking at. Middle of last week, would we break to the downside or the upside? We broke to the upside, so burden is on the sellers to show that we can move back inside of the Wednesday, Thursday range. IWM started to play some catch up after being weaker in the SPYs. You can kind of see this up channel is formed now from below 150, pushed up against the top of it Friday afternoon. We zoom out on this one. I think we talked about 158 kind of being the next 158.5 being the next logical upside. So about a buck above Friday's high for IWM. It's going to be a slow news week again, unless there's some sort of big breaking things. Earnings season really starts to roll next week. We do have some of the big financials reporting Friday, but it really is going to be about FDA announcements this week, some sort of specific company in news, like we saw with Boeing on Friday afternoon, where they said they're cutting production. And so it's going to be light. So you're just going to have to wait and be patient and see. There could be one or two good things each day, but it's not going to be a flurry until next week. And just be patient until things start to happen. First topic we're going to talk about is the CHRS, which reported they had a drug approved Q4. They've reported the first sales of it since it was approved. Numbers clearly were good because it's huge gap up. If we zoom out on the daily, so the drug was approved, I think, in November. And when the drug was approved, the stock was down at 12. It trended lower after that. And you can see over the last month or so, it was being accumulated in the 13.5 to 15 range. Numbers come out. If you look at it on the daily, it's gapping right to this 1750, where it kind of started to break down from in September. So that's really going to be the question: is by 10 o'clock, is it still up in this area here, meaning people are willing to kind of pay up for the stock? Those numbers were that good. But if it fails here, there's nothing until 15.5, 16 for support. It's a thinner stock. Normally trades about 750,000 shares. On big days, you can kind of see it did 4 million shares here on that day right there. So when it moved off of the lows, it had a big day of over 5 million shares. So it could do 3 to 5 million today. It's only done 12,000 in the pre-market. So we want to wait. When it's that thin in the pre-market, we just don't know if it's going to hold up in this area here, and if this is going to be good enough to hold the gap and work its way up to the top of the range from the fall. Now, if they flush it to 16 on the open and there's buyers waiting there, between 16 and 15.5, that's kind of interesting to me. So let's zoom in. So very dangerous to try to chase it up here on the long side, right on the open. In fact, if they start selling it right on the open at 18, it could come all the way back into this support. We got to talk about Boeing. And Boeing had a pretty good run after failing to break below 365. If we zoom out, when was that? That was maybe a week ago, or it's actually almost 2 weeks ago. So a couple of weeks ago, it did. Everybody was watching the high 360s. It got below it. People probably were thinking it's going to break down. Next day, it got back above. It tested it and then trended higher. There's some people caught long this from above 380 for the last 5-6 days. Right at the close, they announced, and it was above 390 when they made the announcement, that they were lowering production. And the most interesting thing to me about this is I was really trading it a lot last year in the 320, not a lot, but a couple of times in the 320 range. It ran up $100. Some really bad news comes out, and it's just not showing signs of rolling over. I guess it's because this consolidation it had an entire year of consolidation between like 320 and 380. And once it broke to the upside, people are just not that convinced it's going to move back inside of this consolidation range. It's really quite bullish considering the negative news flow. And so what you're dealing with today is how many of these people who kind of started to chase it over this last 6-7 days when it got back above 375, it ran up quickly to 380, then it ran to 390. I'm not sure what this negative story was here. It had one negative day. It kind of gapped it down to the low 380s and it got bought again. So, just looking at it, if they flushed it on the open to 370, 372 and that held, it may just be a repeat of where it gets back above 375 and works its way back up. And the news flow is negative, but it keeps on shaking it off. We zoom in on the pre-market action. They're selling at 377 from like 7 this morning. So my first thought is 376 to 377. Lower time frame resistance from the pre-market, support 370 to 372. See how it acts in that range. If it breaks outside of that range, I'd pay attention. HUIA announced a 13.6 million secondary. They're going to get a lot of proceeds there. Most of it is them selling shares. Here's the 30-minute from the last couple of weeks. What you can see is it ran up to 30 initially. It came back down to the support here. So it's coming back down to support from the last month. I'd be looking for people to buy it into that. I'll zoom out even a little bit more for you. And so it had this big downtrend, got bought here. Got hammered from 30 all the way back down to 23. I forget why it gapped up the next day. I'm not sure if that was China or company-specific news, but it's coming into an area where you would expect into 24 that it would be bought. NDEV filed for mixed shelf, stock, preferred warrants. It's gapping up because they said they expanded their deal with Walmart. So if we zoom in, you can see NDEV was being bought just above 5 for a couple weeks. Got hit below 5 Thursday, Friday. They announced the Walmart news. It's back inside of the range. I could see why people were shorting it into the 560s here. It failed here over the last few weeks several times. And so the play is, they're probably thinking it could roll back down into here or here. Support. It only has a 30-cent ATR, so it's kind of like, you have to really, if you catch 20, 30 cents in it, it's a lot. But you can trade it with size on a day like today, because a day like today could easily trade 10 million shares. Actually, just looking at when it's really in play, it trades 20, 30 million shares. So, Shark is still short that. Yeah, Shark has shorted a little bit, feeler position just to see how it trades. So I don't really have an opinion on which way it could break. But if it actually, when the market opens and it's spending a lot of time above 5.5 and eventually starts to hold above, say, 565, that's interesting to me. It has a history. Remember, anytime you have a stock like this that has a history where it went from 2 to 10, back down to 4, back up to 10, people will remember that. And if it takes out 565 and it's above $6 in the first couple hours, people are going to be thinking, oh, this thing's going back up to $7, $8, something like that. Do I think that's likely? No, but it's something you want to be aware of with the price action. Jeff has the second day things on the sheet. TW, I mean, TW to me closed strong on day one after the IPO. We talked about it being a buy into 35 yesterday morning, Friday morning. It was. There was nothing really to do with it the rest of the day. It did come down and kind of test the pre-market support area a few times. But then once it started to trend up in the afternoon, it closed around the high, gapping up this morning. It'll be interesting to see if this keeps on just catching up, making higher lows and kind of working its way up to the high 30s. Snap has had an incredible bounce off the lows, keeps on getting upgrades. If you look at it on the technical side, it's just buyers are really in control of this one. My natural instinct is always to short it, but it's changed since the downtrend from 20 down to 5. If it goes a little bit more vertical, I would imagine there'll probably be a good short in it. But right now, it keeps on grinding higher. 1280. Let's take a look at this. It gapped up on earnings. When was this? So this is August of last year. So let's take a look at that day. That's right. So I remember actually in the after hours shorting this like 14.5 into $15. And it ended up being a great short. I think I took it overnight. And the next day, it actually opened around 13 and held here. So you can see that we're up back into this area. So from last August earnings. So, this 1260, is that where it is in the pre-market? It's almost there in the pre-market. So this is an interesting area here from 1260. Let's zoom in on today. And somebody upgraded it and gave it a $17 target. So maybe it puts in a high right on the open. Maybe they spike it up 30 to 50 cents on the open. That's a common pattern for Snap, where it'll spike up to like 1280, something like that. It will pull back down into 1230, 1240, and start to consolidate, and then maybe the bids will resume, something like that. Or the opposite, gaps up, flushes into 12, people catch it into $12. MU. Right, so MU gapped up a few days ago on the whole chip sector was strong. It's just 42 by 44. We want to see if it can continue to support that 42. If it ever breaks from this 44, it's probably going to 50. And the way that I would play that is I would probably buy 47 calls on a break of that and sell 50 or something like that. Obviously, if it starts to hold below $42, then that's a change. Let's just quickly check on Roku. Just hanging out down by, okay, so Roku, it came off from 70 to 60 like in a day. And it worked its way all the way back over the next few weeks, back up to 70 or 71.5. Got hit the other day after the Apple announcement. Somebody decided to downgrade it today instead of when it was at 70 a few days ago. That's always how they seem to do it. Yeah, this was actually a downgrade over here from Loop Capital. And so we want to see, how much has the psychology changed? Thank you, City downgrade on this one. This 60 is big. I would think right on the open they would try to flush it through there. But let's say it flushes through down to 59, and then it gets back above 60, and then it gets above 61. Probably shakes it off and kind of works its way back up to kind of this downtrend. I'm talking about over the next few days. If it actually flushes on the open below 60 and doesn't even make an attempt to get back above, like is down in the 58, 59 area, then this could be the beginning of a pullback to this move right here. This was the big earnings move, right? Where it had already run up into earnings from 45 into 52. The earnings came up. It was a small gap because people were like, it already had run up 20% into earnings. And it's still intraday. It went from 52 all the way to 64, which is one of the bigger intraday moves I've ever seen. And so that's kind of where we are. The burden, I think, below $60, you really have to see it show some weakness below there. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are going to try to chase the momentum below 60 if you get caught on a quick reversal to like 62 or something like that.